Okay, everyone. Big news. I was able to get a real live author of a real live book who has published it. It is in bookstores and it is a good read to join me in the studio. I can't believe it. I honestly, when I told her I had a podcast, what I meant was I'm recording podcasts, not that I have any followers at the moment. And she agreed to do it, which is amazing. That tells you everything you need to know about her personality.
I imagined for a very long time that I, like the main character in my book, We Don't Talk About Carol, my main character, Sydney, is a former journalist. May of 2020, I decided if I'm not going to write this novel now, when am I going to write it?
And her book, it's a really good one. So I'm really excited to share with you my conversation with Kristen Berry, the author of We Don't Talk About Carol. And she's also a PR executive in the industry. So she's got a lot that she's juggling. And I hope that you find that there are ways to make your dreams come true in your everyday life if you just stick to it. Well, Kristen, thank you so much for joining me. I can't even tell you how excited I am to have you on. I could not believe it when you said yes. I know how busy you are. I read your Substack. And actually, we're here for two reasons. One is that I just get to meet some amazing people on a regular basis. Literally every day, I meet someone that I'm just they are so cool. And the rest of the world really needs to know how awesome they are. And it's not even I don't want stuff that's super altruistic. I want stuff where it's that's so many people's bucket list dreams, right? Run a marathon, write a book, the Appalachian Trail. But you actually did it. And for the record, you also work full time as well. And
Yes.
You live, I believe, in New York, right?
Los Angeles, another big
Los
city.
Angeles. Why did I think New York? I'm sorry. Okay. That's actually maybe a little bit worse, I think, traffic wise. So it's not people will be oh, well, she doesn't work. She does. Well, maybe she just doesn't have to leave her house. Yeah, you do sometimes. And so it's kind of all of the things that people would use as an excuse. It's kind of no, you just really wanted it. It feels like.
Definitely. I mean, writing and publishing a novel has been my dream since childhood. And so I was just very determined to find a way to make it happen. Hence the 4:30 a.m. wake ups,
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't actually add more hours to my day, but the way that I can trick myself into feeling like I do is by waking up super early before people are expecting responses from me from my day job, for example. That way I can actually carve out some protected time to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think, people say to do that. And in front of me is someone who actually does successfully do that. How long did it take you to establish that routine? Or are you, like you said, you're just a natural morning person? What was it about 4:30 a.m.?
And right in front of my face as well. I'm trying to be very conscious of it. So I am a morning person, but I do not naturally wake up at 4:30. My preference would be 6, something that seems a little bit more reasonable.
Is that
slightly more reasonable. So, and also I used to wake up early to work out before my day job. And so the thing about achieving part of my life's dream, which was signing my book deal with my publisher, was that I also then had very firm deadlines and paperwork and contracts that I then had to follow with writing fiction.
Yeah.
And so the only way I could guarantee that I'd set aside time every day or most days to do the work was to wake up super early before anyone was expecting to receive responses from me on Microsoft Teams or on email or things like that. So I've been doing the 4:30 thing at least for a couple of years now, which is wild. And then on the weekends, I let myself sleep in until 6.
I love that for you. My best time is I don't know, 10 maybe.
Great, which is fine too.
10 a.m. My dream job would be if I lived on the East Coast. My sister does this and her company's on the West Coast. And she's my me time is at 8 a.m. I'm that's great. You're killing it.
The thing is, I do think that there is a lot of pressure to become a morning person. Like, I think that there's so much talk about the benefits of becoming a morning person. And honestly, I think that, and this is coming from somebody who wakes up at 4:30, I think that it's a bit overstated. I think it's more about figuring out what works best for you and carving that time out. So if you're a natural night owl, then you can do the same thing, but just do it at the
Just figure
later,
it out.
yeah, at the later part of the day. I know a lot of people who are parents or, have very demanding jobs and they would prefer to stay up until midnight, 1 a.m. That's when they feel the most creative. I wouldn't have two brain cells to rub together at that hour, so I can't do that. I think it's just a matter of figuring out what works for you, and
Yeah.
sticking with it.
And I appreciate that too, what you just said about like this idea. My sister and I talk about this a lot. She's 15 months younger than me. She lives in my neighborhood. I see her all the time. And, one of the things we've really been thinking about is like this idea of like how we've tied like morals to things like waking up
Mm,
early
yeah.
or a moral to, we all know there's like a moral attached to like working hard, but even like to managing money. Like if you how are all of these things really holding us back, right? Like if you don't have a certain amount, then like
Mm-hmm.
you're immoral or looked down on or somebody else is like better than you. So I really
Yeah,
appreciate that comment because it's true. It's like we're
it's
not all
true.
cut from the same cloth.
It's arbitrary. A lot of these judgments we put around things are arbitrary. So I
Yeah.
think yeah, we have to figure out what's right for us and use that let them theory for people who don't agree.
I agree. And I think we need to, I really do agree with that. I do think that there are so many of these concepts that are just holding people back, right? Like, well, I'm not a
Agreed.
morning person, so I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, or Z. And clearly that's not the case.
Yeah, exactly. So to find out what works for you and carve it out and be
Yeah.
dedicated about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And know your capacity.
Yes, very important. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's also, it seems like you're a really good judge of your own capacity. Like, I think that is also such a growing point. Maybe that comes like, after 35 when you're like, you said it, you're like, I can't add on hours to my day. There is a certain level to capacity.
That's something that I'm actually continue to struggle with. Like I am a people pleaser. I want to
Yeah.
show up for people. I want to say yes. My instinct is to say yes when someone asks something of me. And I'm honestly right now trying to question that a little bit and maybe change my knee-jerk reaction to instead of immediately saying yes, giving myself a moment to consider the opportunity
The
and
pause.
to pause exactly and see, okay, do I actually have the capacity? And it's not just a matter of I have the minutes or hours it will take to
Hmm.
do whatever the thing is, but also do I have the emotional bandwidth?
That's
You know,
huge.
do I have just the brain space to do it? And also just because I have the time doesn't mean that it needs to be filled with more
Yes.
productivity as well.
Yeah. Right. That is so, so true. Are you the oldest?
So it's funny. I'm technically a middle child, though my older sister is 12 years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah, so I effectively grew up as an older
Yeah.
sibling when I
Yeah.
was younger. But yes, I do have a lot of older sister tendencies.
I too am the oldest. So everything you're saying, I'm like, oh, yes, I feel that.
Sounds familiar?
And we're working on it. We're working on this. Well, tell me how you got to. I'm so curious because I read the book. I didn't have a chance to finish it, like I said. And also, I do love that your shirt coordinates with the cover of it. And the cover is so beautiful. I love hydrangeas, and especially being in the South. I'm not from here originally, but they grow so beautifully here. But the story isn't really a beautiful story. How did you go when you were a little girl? And, you know, what did you actually want to be when you grew up?
Mm.
Was it an author? Did you dream of living? I don't know if you're from California originally. I don't think you are, but how did you like go from like little Kristen to the Kristen who is doing all the things?
Yeah. So I grew up in Michigan. I grew up in Metro Detroit, and I always imagined that I would be a published author one day. But I've always
Okay.
been very pragmatic. So I never thought that I would be able to graduate from college and immediately pay my bills by writing novels. I imagined for a very long time that like the main character in my book, we don't talk about Carol, my main character, Sydney, is a former journalist. I also plan on going into journalism. I did several newspaper internships during the summers when I was in college, always with the vision of writing a book on the side in my spare time and eventually publishing it. I did write a novel right after I graduated from college. It's my practice novel. That's how I refer to
Yeah.
it now. No one should ever see it, but I learned a lot from the process. And then ever since then, I've just been writing short stories. I took a class through the UCLA Extension program, a creative writing class that was super helpful. Just continuously worked on my craft. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, I know a lot of us are reevaluating our lives, jobs, so many things. May of 2020, I decided, if I'm not going to write this novel now, when am I going to write it? And so that's
Yeah.
what led me to 20 years into my now PR career. I transitioned. I decided after my third newspaper internship that I am a writer. I am not a journalist. Those are two
Okay.
very
They
different
are different.
things,
They're
very different
very
skill
different.
sets.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
cannot be creative if you're a journalist. You don't get to make stuff up.
No. No, you cannot make stuff up. And then
You don't get to
you need to
embellish.
write, you have to write very clear cut, no flowery language, all of that. But you also, and this is something that actually comes up in the book for Sydney, you're often talking to people in some of the lowest moments of their lives when you're
Yeah.
doing your interviews. And it can be for a good reason. It can be to inform the community so maybe they can avoid similar experiences. It's still very difficult having those often emotional conversations with people. And I just decided that I didn't have the stomach for
Yeah.
it, to be
Yeah.
completely honest. And so I decided to find a
I
way
can
of
see that.
taking like the skills that I gained from my journalism experience and turning it into a different career. I learned about PR, how much, PR, how often PR people speak with journalists and write on, to get the attention of journalists. And I thought it would make a lot of sense to pivot. And so I did. And I've done that
Yeah.
ever since.
Thank you again for tuning into this podcast. I want to take a quick moment to thank Carrie of CMCK Media. He has an amazing podcast studio and incredible editing capabilities, and there's no way that I ever could have produced this podcast at this quality and caliber without him. So go give his website a visit and find him on LinkedIn. He has some pretty good stories to share too. It does make a lot of sense to pivot, and I think it'd be really tough to be a journalist. I think, did you kind of feel torn? You said you were talking to people in their worst moments and then having to like turn a story out of it. I think that'd be really hard.
It was emotionally very difficult. I remember in particular, I think the story that really sealed it for me, I had to report on a house fire
Oh,
and a
yeah.
child
Okay.
died in the house fire. Yeah. And I had to ask the
Mhm.
family for, a photo to run alongside the story in the paper the next day. And just, I understand, of course, like again, you can provide a lot of awareness to help other families maybe avoid a similar experience, but you're also asking these things of people who are just in the rawest moments of this tragedy to provide something to you. And I was just like, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
handle this.
That's a lot. I don't know how you did it. Yeah. Cause then they're like, well, our house burned down. And you're like, do you have a
Yeah.
photo?
Oh my gosh, I know. It was
Oh,
awful. And
yeah.
I understand. And I have a lot of admiration for so many journalists.
I mean,
So
it's such an important job. I mean,
it
look at,
is.
especially now, there's so many
Yes,
brave journalists out there. Like, I don't know how
exactly.
they continue to do the things they do. So you got into PR, which actually really makes sense to me as a pivot from journalism to PR to authorship, because it's almost like that to me, PR kind of sits in the middle of those two, right? Like
It's
you're
all
sort of you're
storytelling.
crafting a story, and yeah, exactly. So I mean, it makes sense. I can't imagine that you would have written this book, 20 years ago or when you graduated college. There's no way.
Exactly. I mean, that was honestly one of the biggest problems with the first novel I wrote. I was a baby. I was 21. I had
You had
not
no lived
experienced.
experience. Yep.
Exactly. And so, and for so many other reasons, I'm really happy to have published my first novel in my 40s. I'm also a lot more confident in who I am. It's, easier for me, I think, to show up authentically in the world and feel comfortable in my own skin. I don't think I could have handled the pressure of all of that as well at that time.
Probably. Yeah, I know that you wrote in your Substack, and this made me think of that when you were bringing that up. You had talked about how, like, you just have blinders on. When everyone asks you, "How many books have you sold?" and things like that, I feel like a younger person would have been really obsessed with those numbers, and it might have prevented you. I don't wanna speak for you, but I wonder how that would have affected you had
I
you not been
agree.
able to just not focus on that at all.
I agree. I think, younger me, like, I'm sure there are really well-adjusted 21-year-olds out there that would handle it just fine, but, like, speaking for myself, I know that I would have struggled. I think it's a lot easier to kind of have a bit of a perspective on all of this, like, because I have, had a 20-year PR career and, experienced so much in life outside of work as well,
Right.
which is also grounding in a good way.
Yeah, right. I mean, it informs everything. And it's another reason why I think your dialogue is so good. I mentioned that in the email. Like such a stickler for dialogue, and I just really enjoyed the conversations between the characters. It was really good. It was very believable. And that I was wondering, how did you do that? Like how did you go? You grew up in Detroit. That is a I grew up in the Midwest as well. I actually was born on the other side of Michigan. Go figure. And so I am very Dutch. And then I moved to Indianapolis, spent some time in Chicago, and then came here for my ex-husband's job. And it is wildly different.
Mm,
My little enclave where I live is very much like where I came from. It's a lot of people who are transplants, but there are definitely like, I was very surprised when I moved down here that there are things that are still issues, right? And that is my fault. But also, I had a little baby and I just was in the throes of like, okay, we have to make this move and just surviving it. But, now my kids are in school and it's like, a little concerning in some ways. But how did you put yourself in a character's shoes from like this area and then just do it so well?
thank you. So I chose locations for this novel that I'm either personally very familiar with or have loved ones who are personally very familiar with the areas.
Okay.
So my character Sydney, she and her husband live in Los Angeles, where I live, which was, made it a little bit easier to talk about those locations. And then there's a point in the novel when Sydney and her younger sister Sasha go to Detroit. So again, from Metro Detroit, so that was easy enough. And then I was really interested in the idea of a character trying to solve a mystery that's not taking place in their own hometown. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
trying to solve a mystery in part from afar. And so Sydney's trying to figure out what happened to her missing aunt and five other missing girls who disappeared from the Raleigh, North Carolina area in the 1960s. And I chose Raleigh because that's where my mom's family is from. And
Okay.
so, yeah, my
There.
mom was able to give me a lot of insight on what it was like living in Raleigh in the same time frame that some of my characters went missing. And then I also have an uncle who still lives in the Raleigh area. So I also have a similar relationship to Raleigh that my character does, that Sydney does, in that I'm familiar with the area, but not deeply or intimately. So imagining trying to figure out a mystery from afar with the same tools. So using a lot of Google Maps, for example, and finding
Yeah.
resources available on the internet. That helped the story to feel realistic because I was doing a lot of that same research on my own, from Los Angeles during a
Yeah.
global pandemic when I couldn't
Right.
actually travel for quite a while to visit the area in person.
That's amazing. And honestly, maybe that's why it works so well. It's because it's like you and her were kind of living this dual life. How did
Yeah.
this story come about? Why? And I don't want to obviously give away anything from it. It is a mystery. I love a good mystery. And then it is so, I don't want to say it's like a beautiful mystery that doesn't really feel right, but it kind of in some way is. It's like the idea
Thank
of
you.
family and everything else to me is so, it's not like you're just writing a mystery and it's just a murder mystery like we would listen on a podcast, right? Like there's a lot of depth. So, like, how? How did you get there? How did you bring all these things together without it being, like, too heavy on one thing?
And it's so funny that you mentioned true crime podcasts because those did play a
They
big
do.
role in
Yeah.
inspiring the story. So because it was the beginning of the pandemic, I was taking a lot of socially distanced walks around my neighborhood, listening to true crime podcasts. And it was through those podcasts that I learned that there's some really disturbing discrepancies when it comes to the way the cases of missing people of color are treated in the country. So, for example, Black Americans are going missing at a disproportionately high rate, yet our cases are less likely to be covered by the press, and our cases are also less likely to be solved. And I've always found fiction to be a great way of learning about the experiences of others and, gaining additional empathy for the challenges that others might be facing. And so I thought that it might be if I could find a way of shedding additional light on this very real issue through like a riveting mystery in a work of fiction, then maybe I could, you know, amplify this issue and hopefully open a few hearts along the way.
Yeah. I mean, I think you do. And it feels accessible. It doesn't, I mean, and by that, I mean, you can enter into the story from the side, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
so it's nice. It's like you get into it, you get into Sydney, and then she's like, right out of the gate, she's having like, she's right there with her sister. Is that how you and your sister are? Or your younger sister, I'm assuming?
Yeah, it's funny. So I definitely wanted there to be, I love to take a step back. I love family dramas and I love mystery and
Yeah.
suspense. Those are my two genres of choice when I'm choosing a new novel to read. And so I really wanted to find a way to merge the two. And that's why I decided to root sort of this missing person story in a family story. So just for background for listeners, Sydney is cleaning out the home of her grandmother who recently passed when she discovers that she had an aunt named Carol who looks frighteningly like her, eerily like her, and that she was one of 6 Black girls to go missing from the same neighborhood back in the 1960s. And no one in Sydney's family for several decades has even mentioned the missing aunt's name, Carol. And so I wanted to figure out a way to make it feel realistic that this family dynamic exists with this level of secrecy. And also just wanted to showcase, the way that family dynamics can be extremely complicated in lots of ways. And so 2 sisters can, grow up in the same house, have very similar childhoods, but can have very different perceptions of what those childhoods were, and also be very different people. I think sisters in particular have a lot of pressure to be super close for
Yeah,
life
I
and be
agree.
almost like best friends. And I think it's
Yep.
a bit unfair, honestly, the level of pressure that's put on sisters because you can be completely different people just because you have some of the same DNA and grew up maybe in the same house does not mean that you're going to get along all the time. And it can be difficult to also figure out your dynamics as adults. And so I was really interested in exploring that within the story as well.
I think that is probably one of the things I liked the most about the story because I do have a sister that I just mentioned, and we're close now. But that sister dynamic is intense. And you're
Yeah.
right. I just think that I would love to see someone do like a long-term study on it and then you add the mother in as well. And then let's add in the grandmother and
Yeah.
then maybe a granddaughter. And the complexities just increase. And my sister and I are vastly, vastly different. I mean, she has brown hair, gray eyes. We don't have the same body makeup. No one would guess we were sisters. And even personality too. So I thought that part was incredibly interesting and appreciated it. And I know there are a lot of women out there who are going to read that and identify with it as well because you're expected to be like there's that movie with that song, the Sisters song. I can't remember what it's called now. It's an older movie. My sister's always singing it. But yeah, you're expected to be kind of like this idyllic, like, well, you have a sister, you know?
Right. Built-in best friend, right?
Exactly. Right? No, actually, no. It took a long time. My gosh. And I was a horrible sister. I
We've
just
all
was
we've
like,
all had our moments, you know? And
yeah.
we all tend to fall into old routines as well. Like
Oh my gosh. It's
being
so
an
true.
older sister, like I can often still talk to my adult younger sister like she's still a child. Sometimes I catch
Yeah.
myself doing it. I don't mean to, but it's like it's difficult to break those habits.
Oh, when you're with your family, yeah, you do. You fall right back into those roles. It's so universally true.
Yes.
And I think what I also found interesting was that so I guess I'm curious, like how much of you and your sisters did you bring into the book?
Hmm. So it's a complete work of fiction, but I will say that just the dynamics of having, maybe different perspectives on similar shared experiences and feeling that kind of pressure and expectation of, things always being smooth at all times and that just being an impossible, I think it's impossible to expect that of any relationship. So, like, that part is definitely relatable to me.
Thank you again for tuning into these podcasts, these stories. And one of the reasons why I get to tell these stories is because of my own career, which is with Shimmick. We match really great companies to really great agencies. And over the last 14 years, we have come across some really incredible people doing really cool things. But mostly, we get to help everyday people too that are just looking for the right PR firm, right marketing agency, right advertising agency. And we're here to help. We want to make your agency search so much easier because we've already done the search for you. We have over 350 agency partners, and they're all talented. And most importantly, to me, they're all ethical. And also, we're free to you, the company. Our agencies are the ones that pay us, so it doesn't cost you anything to give us a phone call. You don't need to get your CFO involved. You don't need to get finance involved or whoever is doing that for your company. You can pick up the phone or send us an email, and we can give you kind of the state of the industry, what's trending, and go over some ideas for who might be a good fit. Now that I've shared that with you, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think that is, I liked that dynamic a lot because it was so relatable. And I'm just curious, when you told your family, did you tell your family that you were finally doing it? You were finally writing a book? Like, or how did that come? How did you bring that up? Or are you the type of person who you're, at Thanksgiving and you're like, oh yeah, I wrote a book. And everyone's like,
Yeah, so it has not been a secret that I have wanted to do this for my entire life. And so my mom actually was so lovely in letting me interview her a few times for the book to get some of
okay.
her experiences and get her thoughts on, what it was like again living in Raleigh at this time. There's even an anecdote that I asked if I could have her permission to include in the novel, which I did, which came from her own experience. There's a moment when a character back in the 60s sits, she's a child at the time, and she sits unknowingly at a whites only lunch counter and is told using language I will not repeat on your podcast as to why she is not allowed to sit there. And I included that anecdote because I wanted to demonstrate that the character who is telling the story is, she's not an elderly woman. She's this very youthful, vivacious person who has had this lived experience just to show how recently a lot of these, Jim Crow laws were in place and in so many ways how yes, things have improved in lots of ways, but things are far from perfect. And so I really wanted to show that. So yeah, so long way of saying that my family was very supportive. My uncle took me on a driving tour of Raleigh when I visited to do a bit of a research trip. So he was very aware of this project as well. I decided a long time ago to just be very open about my dream, and I've been really fortunate to see so many people be incredibly supportive of it along the way.
Well, it's just a really great story. And the point about we think so much history has passed, or I thought so much history was past because when I was in high school, and I read later that this was intentional. Like it doesn't have to be published in black and white. Like a lot of those pictures are published in black and white, but actually you can colorize them.
Mm,
And it's like a tool to make it seem like it's so in the distant past, and it's not. And
it's not.
I think that is such an important thing to remember when we think about like the work that we're doing with, for instance, with my children, keeping an eye on the schools and watching what we say, making sure that we're not telling stories that seem like they are ancient history when there are plenty of people who are alive and well who lived this out. And I think that is so powerful. And I am glad that you included that anecdote because the other thing too is that when you're learning this history again and you're so far removed, you're not in the South. You're in, a high school classroom and you're bored and you're trying to, you're a high
Yeah,
schooler. You're thinking it's only in like the deep, deep South, right?
right.
Like, and I went on vacation in North Carolina and it never would have occurred to me that not only was it in recent history and that it would have been not as far south as I had thought.
Yeah, totally. I mean, coming from the Midwest, similarly, I didn't completely understand, how these things have happened from like a geographical standpoint, but knowing the experiences of my family kind of helped solidify for me at least, like, oh yeah, no, this was very rampant throughout so much of the country.
Yeah, it's such a layered book. And I wonder, and the things that you talk about, it is a work of fiction, but it is a work of fiction. The situations are not fictional.
Yes,
So
exactly.
what was it? Did you end up, how did you do your research for the missing women? Are they completely fictional, or did you kind of go into some archives as a former journalist? Like, what process did you use to really create a picture of each of these women who are fictional and again, also in a way not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I did quite a bit of research. There are, I mean, Raleigh, North Carolina in general, did such an amazing job of archiving so many newspaper articles from, you can find newspaper articles dating back to like the 1800s. It's incredible. And school yearbooks. So I looked at a lot of school yearbooks from around the time that the girls went missing to try to capture the feeling of how people dressed, how they talked about their aspirations, like the different activities and extracurriculars that were popular at the time. I tried to make these people feel as real as possible and as authentic as possible. And then I also did quite a bit of research to see how the cases of missing people of color are treated now, but also how missing people were treated back in like the 1960s as well. And one of the characters mentions this was in the book that the concept of stranger danger is a fairly recent one. And so, at a certain in earlier times, it was really common for teenagers and young people to be written off as runaways, just because it was less
Yeah.
likely for somebody to be, kidnapped off the street. I think like that's a much more, 80s is, and beyond thinking style of thinking. And so I did quite a bit of research into that as well. And then there is so much wonderful journalism that has been done around the cases of missing people of color, more in more modern times as well. There's an organization that I mentioned in the acknowledgments called the Black and Missing Foundation that does a lot of work to try and amplify stories that are not getting enough attention from the press or from law enforcement. There's a documentary about them on HBO that's really
Okay.
wonderful. Yeah, that goes into a lot of these pieces as well. The FBI releases statistics every year also in terms of how many people are reported missing each year, how many of them are found, and then they also break these numbers out by demographics. So it's also very easy to see where the discrepancies lie. And so all of that went into the development of these characters in the story. So all of the characters are purely fictional, but they were all definitely inspired in some way by very real cases that I came across within my research.
Okay. Were you, so your degree is in journalism. So that
English.
really, oh, in English. Okay. Is in English. And then you went into journalism. So, but either way, I think what I was getting at is that I can definitely hear that journalistic side coming out where you were using all of those skills to really create these characters.
Definitely. I mean, I definitely leaned on that experience quite a bit. And just researching, fact checking, all of those pieces were super helpful in figuring out how to make the story feel as real as possible.
I was just about to say that it feels real, especially like when you think about just how we are starting to hear things like this. I feel like you do hear things and then it gets kind of quickly, the news cycle moves on.
Yeah.
Because then we were talking about, I remember there was a period of time, there was a documentary too on like Native girls who are going missing in
Mm,
Canada. And then
Hmm.
I think that got kind of swept under the rug, and I had sort of forgotten about it until I read your book, and it's really terrifying.
I know.
Absolutely terrifying.
It is true. It is true. And yes, there's so many wonderful books around missing Indigenous women in this country, in the US and in Canada as well. But it's true. I think the thing is, like, the more times books like mine are published or documentaries of similar stories are released, it helps to remind us to at least even check our own media consumption and ask ourselves the question as well, like, okay, how many documentaries have I watched recently that have involved, if you're a true crime consumer, that involve, you know, white people? And then when's the last time you engaged similarly with a story that involved missing people of color? I think it's just a good thing for us to ask ourselves as well.
I never thought about that before, and that is such a good point. I'm not as much into true crime. I do really love cult documentaries.
Fair.
Like, throw me a cult.
Fascinating.
Still mostly white people, though.
True. That's media for you.
Okay, we can keep it that way, though. I'm okay with that. Like, let's just keep it that way. We don't need to make that a thing.
More widespread.
Exactly. That's not the takeaway.
No.
I do wanna know, when you are thinking about like, if you could go back and do anything differently, I don't when you think about your younger self, right? Like, you're here with this book, this dream that you completed. Is there anything you would have wanted your younger self to know? Like, "We did it," or, you know, was there ever a time you said you never doubted that you were gonna write a book, but even though
Yeah.
not even related to the book, like
My biggest advice I would give my younger self is to be a little less pragmatic, honestly. Like, I was always doing the most, responsible, making the most responsible choice, being as, again, pragmatic as possible. I would tell myself that you have your whole life to do that. Enjoy your youth, enjoy the ability to make some not super harmful, but maybe some lightly bad decisions once in a while. Have more
absolutely.
fun, worry a little bit less is honestly what I would tell myself.
Do you
Take
think you
more
do that
risks.
now? Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but, like, now I feel like it's harder to do it. Now I have, like, a whole life, I have a career, I have a marriage, I have, all these things. So, before I had all of those, kind of commitments and responsibilities, I could have enjoyed it a little just a teeny little bit more, the
Yeah.
freedom.
Yeah. I don't know. I still think you could do something lightly. I don't know.
I guess
Maybe
it's more
lightly.
so like, so for example, I really wanted to work at Vogue for a very long time. I was like, I really want to be a magazine writer at Vogue. It was senior year of college. I actually got an interview at Condé Nast, the publishing, company behind Vogue. They were like, we'd love to interview you. Can you be here, like, let's say next Friday? And I'm panicking. I'm in Michigan still, thinking like, oh, how am I going to pay for it? How am I going to move? How am I going to do all of these things? And so, I hesitated and they were like, oh, you're not in New York already? And I was honest and said, no, I would have to relocate all this. And I like basically talked myself out of an opportunity. So, what would have happened if I had been a little bit bolder and just
Yeah.
figured it out, decided I could find a way to get there, take the interview? I have no regrets. I love where I'm at now, career-wise, and in Los Angeles versus New York, but I don't want to have those what if moments anymore. And I will say that that's like the last time I think I hesitated on a big opportunity. Now I do take them more frequently.
There you go. See, you are doing it.
I'm
And,
learning.
yeah. And you have it figured out.
It's more or less.
Yeah. I mean, well, as much as we can, I guess, within reason. So you get up at 4:30, you write this book. The other thing I'm interested in is like, what do you hope? I know you have more book deals coming. Do you think you're going to where's your heart at? Like, what are you wanting to write next? If you could write anything, what could it be?
Ooh, great
And are you
question.
yeah.
So, I was really fortunate when I signed my deal with Bantam, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House, that I signed a 2-book deal. So I was already locked in to having a second book being published by them. I actually had to turn in the first draft in July, so a few months back. I was very excited that they were interested in the book that I'd already started writing before I signed my deal. So it's still another suspense, another mystery, but this one
Hmm.
is really rooted in friendship versus like a family drama because
Okay.
I think that a lot of us, some of our deepest relationships are with very close friends. And yet I think that if our friendships hit a rough patch, or if you even have a friendship breakup, it's not given the same weight that a romantic relationship is given in society. Like I can't even think of like a good song about a friendship breakup off the top of my head, but I can
I
think of
can't either.
several
Yeah.
about romantic relationships. And so I was really interested in exploring that. And so I'm very excited that that's the book that hopefully will be out before too long.
Oh my gosh, that's like another such a great topic, especially that is very women focused. Again, Mel Robbins, she had that she did recently, I think it was earlier this summer, or maybe I've just listened to it earlier this summer. That could also be the case, where she talked about female friendships and like how hard it is to have friends as an adult, but literally that same topic. And it got me because I have a daughter. She'll be 12, actually next Wednesday. And so we're navigating a lot of friendship things. And it was so helpful in that podcast. Mel and her guest talks about like what you just said. Like women, when we make friends, like they come into your life. Like
Yes.
they watch your children. They know every secret about your marriage. It is so much more intimate. My friendships with my female friends are so much more intimate than any male relationship I've ever had.
Yes,
And then
exactly.
and we've all lost them and you feel so alone. So I can't imagine how poignant that one is gonna be with a thriller, maybe a little murder. Is it gonna have the same level of, like, cultural commentary too?
I think so. I think I tonally, the second novel feels to me a little bit lighter than the first novel. The We Don't Talk About Carol deals with a lot of heavy topics, though I feel that it's ultimately a hopeful story,
It is, yeah.
which is good. But I do feel I felt lighter writing the second story. There's still
Okay.
there are definitely some, deeper topics that are woven into this one as well, but I do feel it I do think it feels a little bit lighter. I could see myself reading the second novel on vacation a little bit with a
Okay.
cocktail, a little
Yes.
bit more than I could see We Don't Talk About Carol.
Well, so more of a palate cleanser. Like, when you watch, like, a serious show, for me, a cult documentary, and then you're like, "I'm just gonna watch an episode of, like, The Office to."
Yeah, you need something like so it's not like it's not a total palate cleanser, but it's lighter for sure, in my
Yeah.
opinion anyway,
Oh
than
my
the
gosh, I
first
can't
one.
wait for that one now too. What
Thank
do your
you.
friends think about this? Like, that you are off doing all these things?
They are so supportive.
That's amazing.
I have these a wonderful book club here in LA. We read, we meet and read books together once a month, and they most of them read an early draft of We Don't Talk About Carol before it was published. It's like could give me feedback, which was super super helpful. And they all came to my launch event for the book in LA back in June. Friends flew in from the Bay Area and from Seattle. I felt so supported. So it's funny because it's a vulnerable thing, doing something creative, putting yourself out there, but it's also been so beautiful to see how truly loved and supported I am. So I think, like, even these vulnerable moments can also be wonderful opportunities for the people who love us to show us how much they care and for us to like receive that. So that's been really
Yes.
beautiful.
That receiving word is something I'm, working on a lot personally, I think, as women. We are maybe not as good at it, the vulnerability and the receiving.
True.
Clearly, I feel like it is so necessary. And what a beautiful moment because you were open about it from the beginning and then you involved so many people, I'm sure. Did they feel like they had a little bit of like stake in it?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely, they did. I think they can also, I was very open to with them about, for example, the feedback that I received from my book club friends, and that was so meaningful in making some important, adjustments to the book to help it become the final product that's now in stores. Which is also why there's so many friends that are shouted out in the acknowledgments of this novel because they either played a major part in reading the book and providing me feedback or just being a really helpful cheerleader along the way to make me feel like I was capable of doing this.
That is so cool. I love that. I love my friends. I think I can't imagine, especially going through life. It sounds like you've got a really good group. And that is really rare, actually, more rare than I think people realize.
Yeah, I feel extremely fortunate. And so many of my friends actually too that are in LA are from Michigan as well. Like a bunch of us moved out here, which has been nice. That's a full circle. But yeah, I think it's incredibly important to have and to really cherish and invest in those friendships.
Well, I don't want to keep you for too long because you are very busy. But the one thing I was wondering, like, if you, because this novel is, again, it's just such a commentary on so many different types of dynamics. What is like one impact, like, that you hope? And we talked a little bit about raising awareness and those sorts of things. But when someone picks up this book, what is one thing like you are really hoping as the author they take away from it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think in addition to shedding light on the issues we discussed, I think that this book is hopefully a reminder that in order to truly embrace our future, we have to first be willing to reconcile with our past. So there's a lot of the characters in the book, including the main character, have a tendency to bury things, and not discuss difficult experiences, not process things, try to sweep emotionally difficult things under the rug. And in fact, the things that scare us the most are usually the things we really need to address within ourselves, within our pasts, and to find people to help us process them if we need to, like finding a trusted therapist, for example. And so it's my hope too that it inspires readers, any reader who knows that there's that thing, that lump under the rug that they're not dealing with, to find the courage to deal with it because you generally feel so much lighter on the other side of it.
Yeah, that's true. It feels like that book is an invitation to do that.
Yeah, that's what I like it to be. That's what I hope it to be.
Yeah. Well, I think it accomplishes that. Again, I cannot thank you enough for joining me for this conversation. And I've seen your schedule. You posted it on Substack, which is great. You have a Substack, and I have read it. I really enjoy it. I've recommended it to other people. Obviously, you have your book. We don't talk about Carol. I ordered mine from the local bookstore. They were kind enough to ship it there.
Yay!
But it's also available on Amazon. So we'll make sure to link all of those things.
Thank
And
you.
I just want to say thank you again. For me, this has been such a great conversation. I've been looking forward to it for weeks because I just really, really love. First, I was interested just in the fact that you had written a book and it was in hardcover and it had like a paper cover.
I love that. I love that a lot. Well, thank you again. This was such a blast.